Hello and welcome to another edition of the comedies. What is it?
You said I could do it. Can I do it? Because it's a special one. Can I do it? Can I do this one?
Did I say you could do it? I thought I said you couldn't do it, even though you insisted you could.
You said I could do it.
Oh, just do it then. Get it over and done with then.
Aha!
Was it worth the wait? Guess who we're talking about this week? Yes, Sir David Frost. No. Hello, good morning and welcome. No. It's Alan Partridge. Who else could it be when Alan has returned to the BBC with a series called This Time after a 20-year plus break, supposedly, from the BBC. Anyway, my name's Adrian Lacey. I'm in Kent, and thanks to the miracle that is the technology of Skype, not that you have to suffer, as I do, the pictures, himself, Shane O'Connor, is in the East Midlands. At a safe distance, one would have to say, from me.
At a safe distance from everything, really. I'm sort of like quarantined here. So that I can't
you can only come out once we know you're not fully diseased.
I can't contaminate anyone from where I am right now. But that's not going to stop me trying.
No. So, be honest. Well, the general formula of the show, if you're new to the show, lovely to have you along. It's called the Comedy Slab because we put a different comedy on the slab of dissection every week, and slap it on the marble. That's not a euphemism. And we get the scalpel out and see what we make of it. And then
I'll tell you what, though. It got me thrown out of Kitchen World.
Oh, and the cat's at the window. I've got a real dilemma now. Do I pause? No, I can't. Big pause for the cat.
How long does it take you to get him in through the window?
Well, knowing that you never dry, I know that you'll just manage to fill the time. I reckon I can do it in less than 30 seconds.
Oh, okay, yeah. Go on, I'll tell them.
Tell the nice ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what you felt when I set Alan Partridge as the homework for this week.
Oh, okay.
I won't be able to hear you because I could put my headphones down.
All right, he's gone off to go and let the cat in. I have to say, it's one of the most beautiful cats I've ever seen. I'll have to try and figure out a way we can stick a picture on it, the podcast one of the weeks, so you can see it. Anyway, when he said Alan Partridge, I've got to be honest with you, very excited. I didn't know he was going to throw the cat at the window. I thought he was just going to let him in through the window. Very excited, big fan of Alan Partridge, right the way back to the Day-to-Day. Now, was the Day-to-Day the TV one or the radio one? I forget which way around they were. I think the Day-to-Day was the TV one. Anyway, right back to when he was a reporter.
Wasn't that the... Oh, yeah. Radio one was on the hour.
That's it, on the hour,
Which went out on the half hour, which was like my favourite joke about it.
Well, I was just telling them that I used that's when I first caught up with Partridge, was on the hour, when he was a reporter. He was the sports reporter, wasn't he?
I'm Alan Partridge. Yes.
Yeah, his voice was a lot different then, wasn't it, back in the day? But yeah, very excited that you'd chosen Alan Partridge because being a big fan, but also nervous, a little bit of trepidation. Yes. Would it work? Is it going to be okay? Is it going to be all right? The movie, I think we mentioned this. Was it last week? I can't remember whether we mentioned this at all. For me, just scraped through. It just scraped home.
Mm-hmm. Well. Coogan was on record. Of course, Steve Coogan plays Alan Partridge and had a more than a passing interest in him. It's been a life's work in a way. But he said that he had to make Alan Partridge a bit more likeable for the movie. I think because the duration of a film, as against so 25 to 30 minutes for a single sitcom type length. And maybe that's why he only just scraped through.
Oh, the other thing is as well, it's different writers, isn't it? Now it's the Gibbons brothers as opposed to it used to be Patrick Marber and Peter Bainham used to have a large input. In fact, I saw a really interesting video. I thought of you because I thought you'd like this. A really interesting video on YouTube showing how they used to record, how they used to write the sketches for Alan Partridge.
Oh right,
and
I would be interested.
It'd be Alan. This is for the this would be for the what was the one when he was living in the Linton Travel Tavern? That was
it was just called I'm Alan Partridge.
I'm Alan Partridge. That's right. Yeah, and it was him, Chris Morris, Peter Bainham, Armando Iannucci, and they used to video improv. And that's how they'd write it. And they said they'd write an episode and they'd have like 90 minutes worth of material and they'd just pick the best bits. And they said, Steve Coogan used to say that he'd fast forward the video and where he fell about laughing, they'd just go to the bit before that because that was the bit that would be really funny.
Just set it up.
Yeah, and that's how they used to write it.
Well, of course, this gives me license. Not that it's the reason I chose this show, but gives me license to do my one name drop regarding Alan Partridge / Steve Coogan, which is that I worked on all of one episode of that second series.
No way, you never told me that before.
Have I not?
No.
Well, you are learning week by week. Yeah, so I will be able to give an inside account, and I must tell you about the woman I was going out with at the time was a massive fan of Steve Coogan, and I introduced her to him afterwards. Little, a Ronnie Corbett style party afterwards, which is a couple of curly sandwiches and a bottle of Tizer. But he did give some stuff away, and there's some interesting stuff going on at the time. So we will get to that. And I did actually speak to Peter Bainham as well at that do, which was nice as well. But, I mean, he corroborates everything you've just said. And Peter said one of the toughest things for them, because by the time, of course, you get to the studio, it's been months since you started the storyline that you've just recorded on that day. You only get one day in the studio, generally, with sitcoms. You have possibly a number of days doing location work, depends on the start of the show, of course.
Yeah.
But he said, that was a tricky thing. He said to me that we just had to remember what made us laugh all those months ago. Precisely what you've been saying.
And for people who don't know, I don't know who Peter Bainham is. He actually appeared in the series as well. He was famously Dr. No vocal cords. He was the guy with the voice box, wasn't he? He played.
I'd forgotten.
On the episode where they threw a cow off a bridge onto Alan.
Oh, right.
That was the same one, wasn't it?
Did he have a voice synthesizer?
That's right, yeah. He said, I'm going to vocal cords. And he said, you could play a Bond villain. He said, you'd be Dr. No vocal cords.
So posh, isn't it? So lovely. Compassionate.
Yeah. But,
right, so anyway, where do
yeah.
we go with this? Do you want to roll up your sleeves and we listen to the first of 3 audio clips?
I think that it's as good a place as any, isn't it? Because it sets the scene to... Because we were both coming to this fresh and new, and as most people were, brand new series, brand new episode. So yeah, I think if we jump in and have a listen for those who've not caught any of it yet, or maybe they're planning to, I think it'd be as good a place as any. What have you got for us clip-wise, first of all?
That's a good question, isn't it? You'd think I'd have my notes handy, wouldn't you, by now? You'd think I'd be into the rhythm of this, instead of having to enter my password on my phone and keep talking. It's a bit like getting the cat in, but the cat is now in, so very well done on keeping talking on that front.
And also,
it's never been a difficulty for you, has it?
Well done for not saying your password out. So I've had to enter my password on my phone.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Cabbages.
Yeah. 0, 0, 0, 0. Right. Well, what better place to start? A very good place to start is the top of the show, or the top of the show proper. What I've missed is something that my mate Russ does to a T, because, he's sometimes referred to as Russ T, not because he's rusty. No, leave it. You're writing your own gags again. Because his surname is Thomas. But anyway, he's a great mimic, and he was mimicking the trailer, which... was just cut off virtually the front of the show, which is, can I have a glass of water, please? My mouth's a bit dry. And Alan being so unimportant to the TV world, no one listens to his requests for water. And the beauty of it is, of course, I don't need to tell our very intelligent audience, but immediately it sets the scene that he's nervous. That's why his mouth is dry, because he's got too much fear and adrenaline. Anyway, so I've just skipped that because that's a kind of false start, as it were, to the show. And what we hear is just the very tail end of the opening SIG theme. And then we're off. We're into the double header that is This Time.
Hello and and welcome to This Time with me, Jenny Gresham, and, a new face today. As some of you may have read, John is unwell and can't be with us tonight, but we're sending him all our love, aren't we? But until his return, we are in the safe, capable, smooth hands of Mr. Alan Partridge.
Thank you. And very thank you for noticing the hands. I recently changed creams, so good to see they're getting results, and they're not quite so, not quite so, you know. Well, you know.
So let's
Not quite so cracked. So let's have a little... That's you. Sorry.
So let's have a little look at the busy life of Mr. Alan Partridge.
And we're off.
Why did I say that about my effing hands? Sorry, it was just nice. It's like, not been on HD before, so you want them to be at the best. You know, I'm a little bit rusty. Need a drop of oil, like the robot from The Wizard of Oz.
I'll be honest with you. At that point, I'm thinking he's back. He's back in the room. Kiss my face, because
smell my cheese.
All the signs were good. I must admit, my heart did sink a little bit, because it's obviously a one show parody, isn't it? Which is a thing that's on BBC One. It's like a pound shop nationwide, isn't it? What they used to.
Nationwide was a pound shop 6 o'clock news.
That's right, yeah. It's all derivative, isn't it, really? It's all spiralling down the same plug hole. The one show, which I must admit I've never watched an episode of in my life, and any time it's been on in a room that I've been in, I've either evacuated the room or evacuated in the room.
Something else. Sorry, I trod on your joke. I just thought there's no way he's going to go there, so I have to say it on his behalf.
So there was that, but then there were like little gems where you see when she went to the VT, let's find out all about Alan Partridge, and there's him in the background on the screen, like playing.
Oh yeah, skydiving or something. Yeah, action man.
Oh dear. What were your initial thoughts then at that stage?
Yes, what were my initial thoughts? Well, I mean, I loved it from the off, partially thanks to my mate Russ, who brought a huge amount of attention to, can I have a glass of water, please? Yeah, I mean, it was pushing at an open door, really, but there was also a degree of nervousness about, he sets the bar so high. And yeah, I guess we'll get into it a bit deeper as to whether it really fulfills the promise of all those other Alan Partridge led shows. I mean, you could throw at it. It's obviously quite a soft target, isn't it? A one show style format.
I mean, the trouble is, it's almost like beyond parody, isn't it? Really, because if you take, not to pick on the one show, but if you said, well, okay, it's like, I think a lot of people were saying it's a bit like Good Morning Britain, and always need like Piers Morgan because they hate Piers Morgan, or if you said it was a bit like This Morning on ITV. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just walked through the room when ITV This Morning was on, and Eamon Holmes was stood with a woman, and they were looking at llamas, and it's kind of beyond parody, isn't it? It's like it is its own parody. These programs are their own parody, really.
You said to yourself, there is no cause for a llama.
Well, no, actually, there was the security. There were burglar alarms, but that's beside the point.
Oh,
but do you know what I mean? And so if you're going to parody something, at least parody something. I mean, like the Day Today parodied Newsnight.
Yes, which takes itself rather seriously, and he did a sort of Paxo send up, didn't he, Jeremy Paxman? Yeah,
Chris Morris was doing a. And so you're right, it is a soft target, but I just wonder if it's a bit misguided, really, because local radio again. He was on local commercial radio. Is something that is easily parodied because it has small budgets and it for all the I don't go into all the reasons, but it kind of works for that. And I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I feel like I'm having the conversation in the restaurant about it started well, but its ratings were a fifth of what we could have expected. You're not getting a second series, and I don't know. I thought there were some nice sparkly bits in places, but the majority of it didn't do it for me.
That's a shame. I mean, it's one thing going for one show style or all the other things you mentioned. It's essentially sending up people who are, for a living, have to appear to be nice. And a lot of the humour is coming from the fact that, the daggers are just beneath the surface, aren't they?
Yeah.
And how could they not be? Humans be humans, especially when there's egos and too much money and too much makeup involved. But where this is different is it's unfolding in real time, isn't it? So we're given a kind of ringside seat in the studio, so we see the bits that the audience at home, in quotes, wouldn't see. And from what you're saying, that's not winning you over as a kind of compensation for having gone for, as I think we're agreeing, quite a soft target.
Yeah, there were lots of elements that I felt made it not the programme it could have been and should have been. The writers, for one, they've changed characters. I think they've changed. We'll come to this as we go on, but they've changed Psychic Simon. They've changed the very nature of his character. He's now bumbling and hasn't got a clue what he's doing, whereas before he was the guy who was really switched on in Mid-Morning Matters and was leading Alan kind of thing. So you kind of, if you're a true fan, you'd be thinking, oh, this isn't right. Lynn was very spiteful. Lynn isn't spiteful, is she, at all? I mean, she's not. I've never.
No, she's very subservient, isn't she? Really?
Yeah, but she's like she was. I mean, again, there were some really clever bits came out of that. But you're kind of thinking you're changing the characters of the people in order to do that, and I don't know whether it only annoys superfans. What was quite interesting was social media, and I think because like Twitter, for example, people want to belong. And I think there were a number of people out there who'd never really got Alan Partridge before and watched this and thought, oh, yes, I get this now. This is funny, and kind of jumped on that bandwagon and, at last they were part of the club kind of thing. And I felt there was a sense of relief for a lot of people that they thought they could finally, understand and get Alan Partridge maybe. I don't know. But I think if you took them back and watched I'm Alan Partridge, those two series, with Michael and those wonderful other characters that he's got.
Gibberish.
Yes. I'm sure it's just a noise. I'm not sure they'd get it. I don't know. Go on. What are you? Am I being too harsh? Am I being too
I don't know.
But
You're making me think I've been a slightly gushing fan. The truth is, it's a bit like Woody Allen. You can easily say, oh, he's neither he nor Woody Allen are on top form, but even on an off day, they're superior to so many other acts and so many other shows, or in the case of Woody Allen, films, that I can be quite forgiving. But yeah, there are some problems with it, and I would say the last sequence, which I wasn't quite masochistic enough to choose something from the last sequence, but remind me to mention it. I think we'll get through that. So we'll kind of go through as you'd expect in chronological order. Must be time for another clip, he says, firing up the old iPhone again.
I just wonder how difficult it is as well for the Gibbons brothers, because it's the Gibbons brothers and Alan Partridge writing it now, and I wonder how difficult it is to say no to Steve Coogan. Because Steve Coogan inhabits the very being of Alan Partridge, and you can see like he pulls him on like you would put a glove on your hand, doesn't he? He's got all the ticks and the nuances. They're all there, and I wonder how hard it is for the Gibbons brothers to go, actually, no, I don't think, Steve, we should do that. I could hear him saying, actually, I am Alan Partridge, and you know what I mean? It must be difficult
over my dead body.
Yeah, to write for him. I mean, there was some wonderful writing. This is why I say they come up with some great stuff. I mean, like the running gag of the oil disasters.
Yes,
was so cleverly done. I mean, I thought that was so beautifully strung through the whole programme, which just started off as that he mentioned Shell, didn't he, and something about the Exxon Valdez, and then somebody had texted in to correct him and say actually it wasn't that, and then Shell press office And it said, no, our spill was the one where...
in the Niger Delta, the fishing villages. Yeah, so that was quite clever. I have to say, there was a little voice in the back of my head said, yeah, it wasn't Shell, was it? The Exxon Valdez or whatever it was. Yes, it doesn't. If you said you had to get some laughs out of oil spills, it's a measure of the quality of the writing. I think at least that they do manage that.
I just thought it was a clever way of intertwining it through the. They made that last as a running gag all through the show, more or less, which I thought was quite a clever thing to do. And again, it was just some of the writing, some of the things they said. He was talking about a bosom, and he said, and it might not be a lady. He said it could be a smooth, fat teenage boy.
That's classic Partridge.
That is. I mean, that's got to be a Steve line, hasn't it? Really, because that is classic Partridge.
Classic.
So
classic Queen.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you. You were gonna whack a gag, whack a clip in.
Yes, I was going to whack-a-do. So, guess what? We're talking cute seal pups, or are they cute?
Sorry, I snorted then.
It's a bit like a pup, actually, because we're going to start with the sound of Silas the seal pup. This is one of the items on This Time.
Not a sound you forget. No.
When I heard that, I had an overwhelming sense of Gary Newman. And the other musician I was thinking of? Don't know why. Seal. I do know why.
It almost sounds philosophical, doesn't it?
I don't think that's the right word, Jenny. I think it's remindful. It reminded me of my granddad.
Did it?
Yeah. He made funny noises and he had whiskers and he liked fish. He was a smashing granddad. One of my earliest memories, actually, is him taking me to the fun fair, and me asking for a candy floss, and then eventually he gave in and got me one, and took me home, said goodbye, but left his hat. And when I ran to the bus stop, he wasn't there. And I saw he was walking up the hill. That's when I realised he'd spent his bus fare on my candy floss. Grandad Graham. Grandad.
Sorry, I never know whether that's going to... Because the way he says Grandad at the end shocked everybody in the studio as well. And it shocked me. I didn't realise that was going to be the end of it. It's fabulous, isn't it? I mean, that's again, great writing, great storytelling. And I suppose that's classic Partridge in a way. Although I did feel that he was the one saying about how vicious they are, and kind of he was trying to tell the facts, and it didn't seem the right way around to me. The guest was the one trying to put the nice spin on it, and he was the one telling the truth. And not normally it's the other way around, isn't it? He's the one trying to put the nice spin on it because he's trying to save the show.
Right. Yeah. Well, maybe they set themselves that as a task. Can we interrupt expectations a bit? It's a very they use the image of the tightrope, don't they? A tight balancing act later on, and it is.
To me, that was the best segment in the whole show. That was. Did you recognise who the reporter was as well?
Remind me.
It was a girl called Lolly Adefope, who was in Please Like. She was the makeup artist.
Oh, yes, got it now. Yes, the moment you said that.
Who I actually tweeted from our Comedy Slab account, and graciously she totally ignored us, which was quite nice.
Well, at least she didn't get the solicitors on.
That's true. Like the other lot did.
We have a certain reputation to maintain.
Exactly, yeah.
I like it where people follow us and then they actually hear the show and they think, oh, no, maybe not.
Yeah.
No names, no pack drill, no Twitter handles.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, what was saying? So you were saying you thought what? You
what was I saying?
Like that section, you thought it was classic Partridge or not?
It is and it isn't. Oh, all I was saying was I wondered whether the balancing act is, okay, we can have Alan Partridge unchanged from series to series, ad infinitum, world without end, amen. Or we could take some risks, and comedy is all, of course, about risks. Anyone would tell you is anywhere near a comedy show. And so I was just saying, apropos what you were saying about, usually it's the other way round. Alan's putting the nice spin on it. Perhaps they sat down and said, right, okay, let's blow that out of the water, as it were, with our vicious little seal pups, and upset those expectations.
In fairness as well, and you're right, I mean, if you think about it, if you think of the progression of Alan Partridge, I mean, we mentioned from, On the Hour, the day-to-day, essentially the same thing, where he was a sports reporter. Then I'm Alan Partridge, where he got his own show. Sorry, not I'm Alan Partridge, Knowing Me, Knowing You, where he got his own show. 2 series of that. Then I'm Alan Partridge, which was like a kind of, fly-on-the-wall documentary where he's trying to get back on the TV. And then Mid-Morning Matters, when he's gone to digital radio. It's always a progression, isn't it? You're right. I mean, they don't kind of leave him in the same situation and just write around that.
Which would be lazy, and we would be the first to accuse them of laziness. But I tell you that for me, there is a problem with having a show we're a show within a show. We're watching the show almost as if we're in the studio, really, in effect.
Yeah.
And that does lead to bumps in the energy levels. And although I guess we've said in not so many words that other shows that we've critiqued on the Slab do necessarily have those gear changes. You can't. I mean, just as you can't have the brothers from last week fighting for 100% of the show, although it can feel like it sometimes. You've got to have those energy changes. But I found that it was a bit saggy at times because we're waiting for something to happen, and of course there's no audience to pep it up either. That's another thing that's changed. Of course, The Office came along in the middle of the Partridge progression, if we can call it that. And of course, that would sound very old school if we went back now to, or potentially could sound a little bit last century. For some ears, not for everyone. But you haven't got that to cover it, have you? Any of the awkwardness or anything like that. You just have dead silence or sort of dead air.
Although they do, I mean, that is, you and I both know, dead air is a crime, to quote Alan Partridge. and you do have that kind of, the awkwardness is very much part of the comedy, isn't it? I mean, I'll be honest with you, I kind of, like being the fly on the wall, I thought was a clever technique because he'd allowed to bring in only one other character, but it allowed Lynn to come in, to talk to Alan in the breaks when they weren't actually on transmission. So you could, if it had just been the show, watching the show as it went out, kind of thing, you wouldn't have been able to do that. So I'm always interested to see what they do with episode 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, if that's however many there are, and whether that keeps up. So. I know what you're saying. You're right about the energy, and you kind of think, oh, where are we going with this now? It kind of meanders off, and then it's back on again, and you get the energy out of the live TV segments. But I don't know. I'll tell you the one thing that really annoyed me, and it's really pedantic. The Foxtons gag. You know what you're saying about Foxtons?
Because it's too London?
Yeah, they haven't got anything out the M25, have they? I don't think they've got an office outside the M25. Nobody in the rest of the country knows who the hell Foxtons are.
Also, he's meant to be on the Beeb, isn't he? And they wouldn't mention brand names like that because it did sound like a sponsorship stroke product placement type thing.
Mind you, he was like that with Shell as well, wasn't he? You could think he's angling to get free petrol for a year or something.
Yes, although we could imagine that you'd kind of think he would be the one to be ultra corporate about it, wouldn't he? But then he's a bit bitter about the Beeb, to say the least. So it's a push me pull you type thing.
I do get the feeling that they were trying to throw everything at the first episode in a way. It's like the section with Simon, which Tim Key's character, which, as I say, Mid-Morning Matters, where he's working for North Norfolk Digital Radio, he was his sidekick. He was sidekick Simon. And so obviously he's done him a favour to bring him on and to bring him onto the TV show. But you kind of thought they could have cut that whole section, couldn't they? You know, when he's like mucking up the screen and he doesn't know what he's doing. And I don't know. I felt it was like they just wanted to shoehorn him in to say, look, he's still here.
Yeah, I thought that didn't work because that was a bit even within the understanding that we are watching an Alan Partridge fronted show, it still was a bit unbelievable that the Tim Key character, Ryman Simon, would be quite so incompetent with the digi wall.
Yeah.
So it kind of lurches a bit from realism to hyper-realism to just stretching a bit too far. But it's a very hard one to get right, isn't it?
And what a waste of Tim Key. What a waste of Tim Key's time. I mean, I'm a big fan of Tim Key.
Well, I think regular listeners will read between the lines.
And in actual fact, I watched an episode of Saxondale with Steve Coogan the other day, and Tim Key's in that. So he's done a lot of work with Steve Coogan. So I think Steve Coogan obviously rates him, but I just kind of think, what? All right, he's going to be in other episodes maybe, but what a waste. Well, I don't know, crazy really. Anyway, sorry, did you say we're having another clip? I can't remember what you said.
I didn't say that, but you're bang on the money because there is a third clip. But I should say, before I forget, of course, it's Steve Coogan's production company, Baby Cow Productions, which, as we've pointed out before, but you probably worked it out ahead of us. In fact, it took me several years to work it out. The link there is with the Paul calf, stroke Pauline calf. What is a calf? It's a baby cow. Ba-bum. And yes, the closest I've got to Baby Cow Productions, as I might have said before, is walking past it's a kind of muse, it's a very stylish place they've got in the heart of the West End. Measure of their success, that they're actually not on the road, but they're off the road, and you have to go under this arch. And since I haven't been invited, I haven't gone there. Right, all of which is neither here nor there. That was a very Partridge-esque type circumlocution, I think is the posh word. And all of which is to cover for the fact I haven't got the cue in front of me. I do apologise. You'd think by now. Okay, just to prove that he can do, as it were, a bog-standard joke, good old-fashioned joke, we have an item here on hand washing, and I'll let you work out the bog-standard, as it were, joke for now, at the top of this third and final clip from this time.
Hi. Jean, hand washing. How often should we be washing them?
Well, any time we come into contact with bacteria. So, after going to the toilet.
Agreed.
After handling raw meat.
Right, and that's separate, isn't it? That's not a euphemism for the first one.
No. Raw meat can harbour some pretty nasty bacteria, so if in doubt, wash. And the advice from the World Health Organization is that we should be washing our hands for a full 20 seconds.
15's fine.
Which is why there's actually an instructional video which shows exactly how to wash your hands.
Yes, please.
So we begin by rubbing the palms together, work up a nice creamy lather.
Those are very creamy hands.
And then you rub the back of your left hand with the right palm with interlaced fingers.
Yeah.
And same with the other hand.
Yeah.
And rinse with warm water.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I mean, listening back again, and I'm suffering from the thing that you normally have. Listening to you, chuckling and chortling at it, was a different thing entirely. But when I first watched it, I thought, am I missing something here? Although there were flashes of brilliance again, that kind of going to the toilet and handling raw meat. They're two separate things. That's not a euphemism for the first one. Which it's so sharp, isn't it? So good.
But of course, the old school gag I was referring to was hygiene.
But didn't they do it
thrown away? Yeah, just not laboured, but it's in there and it's cheeky. But they get away with it, I feel. That's Prianga, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, forgive me if not, Prianga Burford, who appeared in Press. I don't know if you saw that straight drama about Fleet Street, or as it used to be referred to, the great battle between two different types of newspapers.
While we're talking about the supporting cast, Susanna Fielding, what were your thoughts on her? She's the co-anchor, isn't she?
Careful how you say that, but yes. You're getting me back for last week, aren't you?
This is fast turning into Carry On Comedy Slab, isn't it?
It is, for now. I think she's very good, beautifully observed. I think it would bear, because I was picking up some nice subtleties she was doing, like sort of straightening her earpiece at one point under her hair. Nice little subtleties, and she must have just gorged on that kind of show. and ruthlessly, reproducing some of the tics of. Perhaps it's fair to say the female presenter, because there is still a sort of expectation, unfortunately. That's what makes it look so dated, actually, in the 21st century. The women have to, the female anchor has to behave a certain way, and the male anchor a different way, I think. So, yeah, very, very good. I don't know that she has a lot of room for tons of subtext. But she was, highly competent, and I got a feeling that she might be slightly straining at the leash and wanting a, bit more range.
Yeah, you have to kind of do a workman-like job there, don't you? And you are very much a supporting actor. He's the guy doing the comedy, and you're you're almost a prop.
It's almost a straight act. Yeah.
So you're right. Did you notice Liam Williams, by the way, from Please Like, whose star seems to be rising, the hacktivist?
Oh yes. We won't reveal too much about that, but he is revealed. Yes, I did. So a couple of people from Please Like. Did you also notice in the piece about hygiene that Alan Partridge doesn't use any soap when he's finished doing whatever he's doing with his back to us against the urinal? It's a nice little throwaway.
It was the noise he made.
And the leg movements as well.
I just thought that was just great.
So these will bear repetition. That's the nice thing, because even on the second viewing, picking up a heck of a lot more than the first viewing. There's a ton going on.
Yeah. I think he really wanted. I think Coogan really wanted to get the BBC on side with it as well, didn't he? I think he wanted them as his cheerleaders. He did that stunt where they sent out the email internally to people on the BBC email system. Did you see that? Did you get it?
No, unfortunately I didn't. Well, it might be one of many emails I've left unread. What did he say?
It was just basically saying that he was back and he was coming. Don't forget to see him on his new show tonight. And if you replied to it, it sent out an auto reply that said, by the fact that you've emailed me means that it's not important anyway, so I won't be replying to you anytime soon. It was like quite a clever thing that they'd done, sort of thing.
Right.
And there were people, having a care about the fact that they'd sent this, and having Emily Maitlis in it as well. I thought, do we need to do this? I don't know. I just didn't.
Well, I thought that all got a bit incredible, but that is the sequence. Notably, I haven't picked any audio from it, and actually, it's the last 7 minutes of the show.
Yeah, it was a long 7 minutes.
That's quite saggy. And again, I know in comedy you're allowed to bend the rules and all of that, but him, I don't think he's giving too much away. We have to reveal some things. That he ends up in a lift trying to interview a guy, and that's where he sees Emily Maitlis. And you think, okay, I have to park the technician in me and say, okay, that's technically impossible, but does it work comedically? And it still didn't quite work for me, even when I managed to stop being a complete techno nerd about it. And it's a long sequence to not have many laughs in. Sorry.
I was going to say I mentioned the writing and the change of ownership of the writing. To me, it has had an impact, really. And
did you notice, by the way, though, before I forget, and I must do one or two personal anecdotes quickly before we go to the star rating, but the Gibbons brothers wrote Hang Ups, which, of course, we slabbed many weeks ago, the Stephen Mangan vehicle, where he's a therapist over Skype. So, they've got their own. Obviously, they're not going to be lightweights if they're working with Coogan.
Oh no, they're funny guys and they're great writers. And I think it's the difficult thing is it's one thing writing something as the Gibbons brothers, but it's something completely different to write something that is the Gibbons brothers, but sounds like Patrick Marber and Chris Morris chipping in, and you know what I mean. It's a difficult to try and to be an emulator. I think it's really difficult. It was just that somebody had interviewed Patrick Marber and they had the foresight to ask him. They said that Alan Partridge is now back on the BBC. This and his other recent projects have been written by a different team. Are you sad not to be directly involved with the characters' developments? And he's very diplomatic in his answer. But he did say, he said Alan needs a committed team around him. I don't really mean Steve or Alan. I think probably means Alan. I don't know.
Right.
He said, I can't give that amount of time even if I wanted to because of the other projects that he's working on. So it doesn't suggest there's been any kind of rift. It's more, or any change of direction. It's more of the fact that because of work commitments, they're suggesting that's why Patrick Marber hasn't been involved in any of the writing. So,
but if you think, it made me think. I don't know why, but if you take the parallel with music, like Miles Davis would never have stuck with the same band, would he? Year on, year out. So whatever the busyness of the first band is, an artist like that is very ambitious, and Steve Coogan is nothing if not ambitious. So he tells the story of finding himself out doing not quite a Butlins thing, but years and years ago, before it really took off. He was on Rhodes Island, the Isle of Rhodes. Well, I never know how to say it. I've been there in one of the Greek islands.
Yeah.
And but it was a measure of that was. And he was effectively saying, what the hell am I doing here? Just doing a hotel gig by the swimming pool or something. And that just kicked in a massive ambition. And I also met one of his mates from, I think, school days. Is it Lem Sisse, a poet? Ethiopian roots guy, was adopted. He's got his own fantastic story. But he said, from the word go, Steve Coogan wanted to be in the movies. It wasn't just enough to be on radio or TV. And then to have ended up on the Isle of Rhodes, you could see why, hang on, this life plan's not quite working out. Very ambitious guy.
Because he was the voice on Spitting Image for a long time, wasn't he?
Yes, it's quite a roll call of names, aren't there?
Most famously, Neil Kinnock, I think, was his.
Was that him?
Yeah,
right.
But
I love babies under 18, babies over 18. But I can't do as well as him. Anyway, right? Do you want some name dropping? Hashtag name drop.
Yeah, go on.
Just very quickly, what I would say about Steve Coogan is, I'm an absolute perfectionist. I don't think I've got anything too surprising to say, really. But what I liked about him, I remember I was miking people up. I was doing the radio mics on that day, and so the nature of that job is you try and catch people while they're in makeup. Very often, which is just off the studio floor. What I was struck by was that Steve was talking to other actors who weren't, big characters, and showing loads of interest in them. And you might say, well, of course, any decent human being would do that. But it'd be so easy for Steve to have everyone come to him and sort of bow before him.
Yeah.
And it would all be about him. But he's not an egomaniac. He was genuinely, I felt, interested in finding out about the other actors, what they were up to. And that was really touching, and that will always stay with me.
I think that's borne out by the fact, I was just going to say, with Baby Cow, if you look at the talent that they've developed through that company, I think they've done single-handedly more for British comedy than the big broadcasters, haven't they? Through taking a chance and trialing people. Sorry, Gordon, you were going to say? Yeah.
The other thing was the little BBC party afterwards. A lukewarm drink and as I say, a curly sandwich. So I was with my then girlfriend, who, as I said previously, was a massive fan, and I did an Alan Partridge. I went up to Steve Coogan. Probably I butted in, which I should never do. I hope I waited for some kind of visual cue, but he was very gracious. And I said, can I just introduce you to your number one fan? What a naff thing to say. But again, he didn't say, you sound like Alan Partridge. But then he engaged really politely, graciously, fully involving himself, not sort of looking all around the room for the next connection to sort of walk off to. And what he said was something that, in a sense, it's blindingly obvious once you say it, but he genuinely wanted to know which things that my then girlfriend Ruth had found funny, what particularly worked. It was like he was doing his own comedy slab of Alan Partridge with a one-woman focus group, and And then she said, oh, and this happened, and this happened. Then, of course, the Foxtrot restaurant, the famous scene, smell my cheese, you mother. I think she would have said, that was the high point. And he said, yes, that's what you want. And he's not sort of bigging himself up. He's just saying, yes, of course, you want the progression of the show to get funnier and funnier. And that's another very difficult dynamic that writers and performers have got. Because it's not enough to have a really funny first third of the show. We'd spend all the time on the Comedy Slab saying, the show just fell off a cliff after that.
Yeah.
So it's things like that, and then what I said about Peter Bainham and so on. So it's fantastic to have had that opportunity to hear it straight from the Partridge's mouth.
Well, at least you appreciate it, because so many people have been in that situation and don't even appreciate what they've done and who they've met, and I think it's nice when people appreciate it. I really do. Time for points, I think. And what do points make?
Prizes, or is that pets? I worked on that as well. Pets win prizes, but we won't be slabbing that.
Was that Dale Winton?
Please. It was indeed the late, bless him, Dale Winton. Yeah.
No,
we did have. There was a llama in just outside the studio. Well, it was brought in for that show. I'm sure it was that show.
Oh,
is that a pet? Can you have a? I suppose you can have a pet llama.
Yeah, llamas. Are, and what's the other ones? The alpacas.
Oh gosh, no, they're cuter, aren't they?
Well, we nearly bought it when we bought this house. We nearly bought a house that had got a field at the back of it, and they said, currently the local doctor keeps his alpacas in there.
Blimey!
And I said, what does he keep them for? For meat? And he went, oh no, they're the wool. He said some people come along and they shave them however often they do, shear him, and. Yeah, he's up to.
I thought you were going to say he was keeping it for medication. I thought, how's that work?
Yes,
the local doctor.
I prescribed 6 alpaca eggs. Well, it's funny enough. I have got it under my desk here. There you go. How fortunate is that? Yes. Anyway, points.
Right.
Me to go first?
Please, yes. I hadn't even thought about it.
Okay, the bush I am not going to beat about. I will give it a 2.5 out of 5. More disappointed than I was. Impressed, unfortunately, and I'm hoping that it's just first episode jitters and
first night nerves.
Yeah,
can I have a glass
maybe
of water,
I'll
please?
get used to it a bit as well. Perhaps that's part of it. I don't know.
But it's also, I will have to say, and stating the obvious, but it's high expectations, isn't it? That's high expectations mean lower points.
Of course,
unfortunately, if it's not delivered on. Where am I going with this? I'm thinking 3.5, but it is between 3 and 3.5. I think it's going to be a grower. I think it will bear repetition, as I say, because I think there are lots of subtleties in there that you can't get first time or even second time through. So I'll give it 3.5, and I have to say, I come from a position of enormous warmth towards this character, but also some trepidation. You and I, of course, having worked in local radio, I would give myself every show, because they are, of course, live 3-hour shows. I allowed myself 2 partridgeisms, 2 unintentional partridgeisms. So I thought, I can't tell myself off if I have just the odd Partridge remark. It is bound to happen on a live show when you're just trying to fill, and you've got to, you're trying to conform to a certain house style. You know what it's like.
You close the mic,
radio.
don't you, and you think, oh, that was it.
Did I really say that? That's this hour's Partridge. I've only got one more, and then I'm done.
Anyway, very respectable 6 out of 10 for this time with Alan Partridge. On next week's Comedy Slab, let me set your homework, young man.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
I'm going to throw a curveball straight back at you, actually, because when this time with Alan Partridge went out on air, the programme that was immediately before it, I understand, was a programme called Warren.
Ah, no, I just happened to see the link to it, but yes, I know nothing about him.
And
not Warren Mitchell, then.
No, it was getting absolutely slated on Twitter. Is this what the BBC classes as comedy nowadays? What an absolutely disgusting waste of money. It's disgraceful.
Signed Shane O'Connor.
No, I hadn't seen it, you see. So, and then I kind of looked it up and I thought, this new comedy starring Martin Clunes. This has got to be worth a watch. So, all I can tell you about it is that it stars Martin Clunes. It's called Warren. The main character is Martin Clunes' character, Warren Thompson, who is a driving instructor. And it's it's him and his life, really. That's the premise of the programme. So that's your homework for next week. We'll be reviewing Warren with Martin Clunes.
You should have said I won't BT about the bush.
No. Clever.
Oh, not that clever.
We're going down the rabbit hole to have a look at Warren.
Yes. Where the fox is it going to go next? Well, let's move swiftly on. Anti-social media, as it's becoming rapidly, at Comedy Slab on Twitter and Facebook. If you could follow us on the former, not only will you, of course, get a promotion and a nudge each week about the new edition of Comedy Slab, but there are other things as well. Sadly, sometimes it means an obit for someone we've lost. I put a tweet up about Andrew Preview. Was it Andrei Previn? We've just lost the musical conductor, but a reference to somewhat inevitably his fine performance on Morecambe and Wise, which I think generations who weren't even born for years after that. I hope it's enough of a kind of event comedy. It's part of your British birthright to know those sketches and the famous piano concerto and so on.
Yeah, and if you got all the right notes, you want them in the right order as well. That's the.
Of course you do. I've never had my notes to hand actually, and they're quite higgledy-piggledy. But yeah, so what I'm saying is that the Twitter account is not simply about us. We're trying to be a bit Steve Coogan and look beyond ourselves and raise our eyes up, and I retweet stuff and Shane retweets and likes stuff, and so it's worth subscribing to at Comedy Slab on Twitter.
Keeps you up to date with the world of comedy, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to maybe go back and listen to some of the other episodes, or maybe you want to make sure that you don't miss the next one, then you can catch us in all the usual places. Apple Podcasts, I think it's called this week. Well, they're a fast-moving landscape down there.
It's called This Time.
iHeartRadio. We're originally on Spreaker, so if you go to Spreaker or direct your browser towards Spreaker, that's probably the best place to find us, and you can actually subscribe to the podcast there as well. And we're very grateful if you do. And we're also on YouTube as well, and you can see it on a semi-visual version as well.
And it would be great if you could, sorry to interject, but a personal recommendation always works a treat. So if you've enjoyed the show, as we trust you would have done, do recommend the Comedy Slab to friends and family alike.
And we'll see you next time on the Comedy Slab. Thanks for being with us. In the meantime, can I have a glass of water, please?
I've got one here, but my mouth's very dry. I think I'm going to need another one. That was a terrible impersonation on my part. I'll leave it to Russ.
Turns into Peter Cook, doesn't it? Or is it nothing more?
Yes, Dad.